In my humble opinion, 2015 was a relatively weak year for gaming, but 2016 already looks to shine brightly with some interesting titles in the first half of the year. As such, I'm going to count down my top 10 most anticipated games of 2016. Of course, everyone is excited for different things, so if you feel unfulfilled by this list, then do feel free to share your own list in the comments below. Note that this list is based on games we know are due release in 2016. None of these titles are speculation or based on rumour. Number 10. Mass Effect Andromeda. Admittedly, I loved the first Mass Effect, but around the halfway mark of Mass Effect 2, the game just suddenly clicked with me, and now I hold Mass Effect 2 and 3 in high regards. Andromeda could be an interesting refresh to the series, focusing on a new character and a new story, while also taking reference to the original series. I'd be curious to see if your actions in the previous games influence the legacy that Commander Shepard left behind. Time will only tell, as there is little known about the game. But I have high hopes that BioWare has the capabilities to do something extraordinarily visual and narratively interesting with the new technology. Number 9. Dishonored II. I wasn't blown away by the original game, but it was certainly the basis for something extremely interesting. Employing new abilities will certainly go a long way to put this supernatural stealth thriller ahead of its predecessor, and the added level of difficulty, according to the developers, could make this a more tense and engaging experience. Playing as two different characters with alternative perspectives could definitely bring out the story better, and the developers have stated that there is more to this, so all is yet to be revealed. Like Mass Effect Andromeda, very little is known about Dishonored 2, so here's hoping for answers in 2016. Number 8. Doom. Wow, my accent makes that really difficult to say. Another Bethesda-produced title. I don't have much of an opinion of the original Doom, bar understanding and appreciating its significance to game culture, considering it was a year before my time. But I'm sure the transition to the modern era of gaming was a difficult challenge to say the least, yet they seem to have nailed it down pretty well. It returns to the classic arcade style of fast-paced run-and-gun combat. The combat looks incredibly gratifying, and I have to say the bravado-infused over-the-top mayhem has certainly grabbed my attention to say the least. It's certainly looking to be the kind of game in which I can just switch off my brain and enjoy it for what it is, and I'm sure the level of difficulty will keep me on my toes as I frantically race about in an attempt to avoid my inevitable trip to hell. Number 7. Dark Souls 3. I was pretty open about the lack of fulfillment I got from Dark Souls 2. Location variety was relatively uninspired, the enemies were very samey, and the intensity just simply wasn't there. Thankfully, Dark Souls 3 so far seems to take a step back into areas that make the original game so great. Emphasis has been placed on surprising the player and catching you off guard, and tweaks have been made to the RPG elements and combat so that a sense of progression is better utilised. It's more Dark Souls, so it's nice to dive back into a world of pain and suffering, so prepare to die one last time. Number 6. Horizon Zero Dawn. Guerrilla Games have spent the last decade working on the Killzone games, which always serve as a technical demonstration of the visual fidelity that PlayStation has to offer. But thankfully their new IP, Horizon Zero Dawn, looks not only to visually impress, but also try new things with open world action RPGs. The player ventures through a post-apocalyptic world set 1,000 years after the 21st century, where mechanized creatures dominate the land and civilization has resorted back to a Stone Age lifestyle. From a creative standpoint, the game looks very much like Enslaved Odyssey to the West, but the game is said to be like Assassin's Creed meets The Witcher, so that's a very promising comparison if we're talking Black Flag meets The Wild Hunt. The gameplay demo currently being shown makes the combat look thrilling, as you have to hunt or be hunted, and using your various weapons and tools to different strategic purposes seems to be at the core of the action. Number 5. The Division. Honestly, I'm still not entirely sure what The Division is, given that information has been relatively ambiguous, but I do love the concept, and the gameplay they have shown seems to keep well within the tactical tradition of Tom Clancy. The slow-looking pace, cold winter aesthetic, and ominous tone set by the empty streets of New York have really grabbed my attention. I just enjoy looking at the little details, and if you know me, I'm in love with a game that tells short stories with their environment. Just watching the cinematic trailer has been very encouraging in this regards, even if I understand the need for caution. Don't Dead Island us, Ubisoft, you sons of bitches. Number 4. Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. It may have shot itself in the foot with that pre-order incentive, but a game with cyberpunk-inspired visuals and nods to the neo-noir genre like Blade Runner will always have a place in my heart. The game and its design look beautiful, and stays extremely faithful to its own narrative and emotional philosophy. Augmented biology and tragic circumstances are something Adam Jensen never asked for, but the way the game looks is something I certainly asked for. The game has been fine-tuned to fix the clunky controls that plagued the previous game, and the stealth elements have been greatly improved, making combat much more tense and satisfying. The game certainly appears to cater to different playstyles, so there is a good sense of variety if you decide to go all guns blazing or avoid confrontation altogether, and those surprisingly spacious vents make a welcome return. Number 3. Far Cry Primal. I called it. I know Ubisoft are prepping this franchise for annual releases. But I have to say, Primal is the perfect way to go. Far Cry at its roots has always been about predatory instincts, stalking your opponents and making you feel more like a hunter than a special operative. And thankfully the franchise has remained incredibly consistent to the point where it literally plays its own philosophy by making us hunter-gatherers. The use of primitive Stone Age weapons and animals that serve a useful purpose keeps Far Cry firmly one of my favourite franchises. The use of an eagle to scout a settlement and act as a weapon is an interesting take on tactical planning, and being able to send animals in to do your dirty work gives the game a far more cunning, if indeed barbaric, feel to it. As long as the setting has a good level of variation and they keep the story and gameplay relatively fresh, I feel very confident in Primal, even if I'm hesitant that it'll sit comfortably where Far Cry 3 and 4 accomplish so well and refuse to branch out. It's certainly appearing to be more Far Cry, but that is far from being a bad thing. Number 2. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Naughty Dog products are no longer just games, they're now an experience. Coming off the success of one of the greatest games ever made, The Last of Us, fight me on this, I dare you, putting Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann back in the same director's chair is something fans very much welcome. From the initial gameplay, the animation excels any other game out there, and attention to detail is incredibly subtle and makes the game feel like a true cinematic presentation. Combat looks a lot more engaging this time around, and there does appear to be some essence of a stealth evasion system that adds some much needed variety to a series I feel is let down by its repetitive gameplay. And let's not forget that there is now dialogue options, giving me the impression that we'll now have to make difficult and questionable decisions, which will certainly change how we view Nathan Drake. But what more can I say? We can't hesitate when it's Naughty Dog, because their professionalism, commitment, creativity and discipline has never let us down. Number 1. Firewatch. Following the aftermath of the 1988 Yellowstone fires, you play a fire lookout volunteer who is tasked with investigating a disturbance in the forest, and from there the mystery starts to unravel. And don't read anything more, that's enough information you'll want to go on because Firewatch is an adventure title where exploration and discovery make up the majority of the gameplay. If anyone is familiar with Gone Home or The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, that's the kind of game you're in for. Another gameplay feature is communicating with your supervisor through a walkie-talkie and making dialogue choices that influence your relationship with her, and will likely play into how the story unfolds. It may not seem like a lot of information or indeed anything special among the other games on this list, but it's the simplicity and story that have really gripped my attention, and how the game relies on subtlety and suspense has really kept me excited. And if you want to talk about visuals, the art style was created by Ollie Moss, who you may know for his reimagining of movie posters. It's one of those games I avoid knowing anything about until its release, because it's the lack of detail that actually transcends my interest over any other game in 2016. Anyway guys, that's my list. Make sure to leave your own thoughts in the comments below because I'm very curious to see what you guys are excited for in 2016. Until next time, if you liked the video, would you kindly subscribe? And if you happen to share the video on social media, that makes us best friends. Okay guys, Happy New Year and see you all very soon.